I tend to talk kind of loud, so maybe I'll be hot. It's because I can't hear very well. Well, I was here about 4 years ago and I presented some VHF. So if you remember that and you think I'm going to give the same presentation, well, you might be a little bit. I might steal some things over again. But I want to thank you for inviting me. This is I really enjoy talking about the things I enjoy. So I hope you do too. First, just a test real quick. I know everybody in here, or almost everybody, has their license, but how many have operated VHF on upper sideband before? Have we done that? So maybe half of us have done that. Okay. So you can do a lot on FM, and you know that already, but I want to encourage you to, if you got a little bit of extra money, try getting an upper sideband radio. And there's expensive ones, there's used and expensive ones, but you get that little bit of window into upper sideband and things get really interesting. I'm going to try to touch on that just a little bit today and try to sell some of the sizzle. I did do marketing for a couple of years, and so I tend to lapse into things like that, but I want to, in fact, Mark has asked me to represent this part of the hobby to the Oklahoman people. So when I first got here, there was very few VHF contesters. There was a few people on the air and during contests. And I'll be honest, if you go out and hunt for people on 2 meters and above randomly, you're probably going to be disappointed. So what you want to do is kind of gear up for a contest. And there's one today at 1 o'clock it starts, and it ends on Sunday night at 10 p.m. So if you've got upper sideband capability on 2 meters and haven't tried it before, or 6 meters, it's going to be a great 6 meter voice and digital weekend too. September is always wonderful. Give that a try. And now, enough of that precursor stuff. Let's get into it a little bit. If you're wondering, well, I can't talk very far on 2 meters, I can just talk local. Well, you'd probably be mostly right if you're talking FM. You can talk long distance FM as well, but it's not as many people are on it. But if you get on 144/200 on 2 meters, this is during a contest. It was September of last year, and I was located on top of Mount Scott, which has got some natural advantages, but about most of that blob there was actually occurred on a hilltop in southern Kansas. So you got to be looking for these, and I've got some tools in here to help you know when this is happening on the air, and then you can get out there and do it. Well, you're saying, well, Randy, I'm not insane like you are. I don't have this stuff, right? I can't do it. No, you're wrong. Look at this car. You all got a car that looks like this. They all look like that now, right? But you see this? He stuck a 6 meter vertical off to the side, and on that side, he's got a 2 meter vertical. But when you put them on the side of your vehicle, guess what? They're horizontal. And horizontal is where the action is for 144/200 and other VHF bands. We made contacts all the way to North Carolina that day, and it was probably one of the best openings I've experienced during a contest before. Like anything, if you've been out fishing, if you catch a fish and then you don't catch one for an hour, but then you catch another one, it's still fun, right? You're still having fun. So sometimes it's like that. Sometimes you don't. So I got very bored trying to get other people excited about ham radio and VHF. So I said, why don't I do it a little bit different? Why don't I bring people with me? So this vehicle actually can house 3 people comfortably inside of it. This one here, he does 2 on that one. So I just wanted to tell you, this is possible. This doesn't happen every day. In the summertime is the best chance for this to happen, but it can happen any time of the year. So let me get into this. Do you need a lot of money? Well, you need a radio that does upper sideband. I've got an old FT100 that I use, and I gave it to my brother-in-law, Nick, in his car. And I owed him for some other stuff he'd done for me. And I gave him that, but he's had a remarkable amount of success doing this. So the first time you go out, I didn't want somebody to have to count on getting long distance skip or counting on 6-meter digital or 6-meter voice, because sometimes you can go in an entire contest and you only get local people on 6 meters. So if you're mobile, you go around looking for them. If you're here in Norman and you're trying to talk to somebody on 6 meters and 6 meters isn't open, you're going to talk to everybody else in this room and probably nobody else. That can be fun too. You still get points for that, but it's fun when it opens up. So what I'm trying to say is you need these minimum things if you're going to go mobile. If you're in your house, if you have these things, you're really good too. And we're going to talk about fixed operations. Band openings happen all the time, but how often? I'll get to that. VHF contests happen occasionally, but how often? Well, I'll get to that. January, June, September, all have VHF contests in them. I usually take the time in between to plan my next contest. And to have a successful VHF contest, you need to plan just a little bit ahead, and I'll get into that too. But we're here not to just talk about VHF contesting today. We're going to talk about, what is VHF? Does everybody know what VHF is? I'm going to skip over that part. VHF is 6 meters and above. And I'm going to say, where can you take this? And most of you probably already know these facts here, but this is, if you're going to get into VHF, these are the frequencies that you'll probably learn and frequent. Everybody kind of ignores 1 1/4 meters, 222 and 902. And we found radios, an Alinco radio that does both of them on FM. So we talk to each other on those via that way. I've got an old radio that does upper sideband, and that's predominantly the way the big contesters go. But if you want to get started cheap, $250, and you've got a radio that does some odd bands, and you can say, I'm on that frequency. I'm going to skip. Yeah, everybody knows higher is better for VHF, right? So I do want to show you a picture, and I just thought this was a cool picture, so I used it. But if you're down here on this island in a moat in England, and you want to talk over there, on 70 centimeters, because 70 centimeters is really absorbed into trees, if you didn't know it, you might have a little bit of difficulty with that. But you climb up here on that little balcony up there and you hold your FM radio up there, you'll talk 30, 40 miles with it. So similarly, if you've got an antenna and you can only get it 10 feet up in your yard, don't bother. You're probably going to be more frustrated than you are happy with that. But if you can get it above at least the house, that'll help a lot. And you get it above a tree, now you're talking. Things get really interesting. And I did see that K3NT was on here, and Marcus is on here, N5ZY. I have used some of Marcus's charts in this a little bit later, and K3NT has been a constant contributor and supporter and a fellow operator during our contest. So I wanted to acknowledge them on the air. All right. So we're going to take today, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to satellites, meteor scatter, EME, VHF POTA, and VHF contesting. And I'm going to do all that. Can somebody give me a warning about 5 after or so I don't go past? But I'm going to try to do these fast enough that you understand what's going on. How many people in here have operated satellites before? A few. Okay, good. So if you think that's too hard, it's not as hard as you think. Even with a simple non-duplex FM radio and a handheld antenna, you can work satellites. You'll probably need somebody that's done it before to help you. And if you ever need somebody, those people that just raise their hands, those are good candidates. I'll be glad to help you. I could spend an entire session talking about satellite contacts and contacts, and you probably already had somebody talk satellite contacts. No, we really haven't. So all right. Coming back. Oh God. I wish I was more of an expert. I actually had about a 25-foot antenna when I lived in Kansas. You ever been to Kansas? Flat, right? And I didn't have any trees, so I could not have to go up very high, and I could work satellites, and I had so much fun with it. And I just got done buying a new device that was going to put me on the satellites. I just keep putting up towers, and I'm glad I live in the country. So let me pop out of this real quick. I'm going to show you a quick video, and I'm not going to show you the whole thing. Don't worry, it's 10 minutes long. I'm not going to try to broadcast the audio to this. So if you hear it, that's don't worry about this. This guy went and did POTA, and he went up in the hills of I don't know, somewhere in the south in the Smoky Hill range in Echo Mike 85, and you're going to see where he went. He climbed up there. I guess he walked up there, and this is his. Yeah, sorry, the video quality is a little bit sketchy here, but what I wanted to get to is when he operates, and that's coming up right away. There he is. So you probably have seen this antenna before. This is about a $200 antenna, I think now, isn't it? And it's called an elk antenna, and you can get them online. You can get them in a couple of days. He's got a little pouch here, and I think he's got an audio recorder, which I highly recommend. And so you will not be able to log at the time you're doing this. And that's where he's at, probably in South Carolina. But he is
Echo Mike 58, November 8 Hotel Mike, KG4AKV.
the bandwidth to this thing is that's why it's a little bit hazy.
USL John, tank 73 and NHM.
Yep. Okay. That could very well be. It's beautiful on my left.
Alpha Kilo Victor, National Parks on the Air, Blue Ridge Parkway, Papa Kilo 01, Echo Mike 58.
All right. So he's got a radio. I'd have worn my space contract. I appreciate it. He is
Mike 4, Uniform Lima.
He's just not, he's talking. So he's made 14 contacts in one pass. I think I've made 5, and this is the best I've ever done. But he's kind of in a rare location, and he's National Parks on the Air. That's the way to get people, that's the way you own a satellite. So I think he was clever in doing that to have a lot more fun. So also, you can do it with 2 radios, one send, one receive, and that way you can constantly hear. And then you can hear something I love, and that is hearing your voice come down on the satellite. That is a moment that you'll just go, oh, I just heard space. It's pretty cool. And similarly on moon bounce, I haven't done moon bounce yet, but I'm going to. When you hear your not the voice, but your signal come back off the moon again, it's a magic moment. You know that you're really doing what you're trying to do. So that's enough of that. I'm not going to go any deeper on that video because I just wanted to touch on the excitement of that. And today,
thank you very much.
It is definitely. So, and I just want to touch on this. The first time you do satellite and ham radio contact, it's like
the video is still running
off the repeater, right? There's a lot of joy there. It's the same thing when you do a satellite.
The video is still running.
Like, oh my gosh, I did that. Wow, I want to do it more. And what do I need to buy to do it? So the best thing to do is to have a demo sometime and give you a chance to talk on the satellite. It'll be extremely slow getting started the first few times.
We can't hear you for the video.
I used to take my daughter out, and I'd have her log. She's better logger than I am. She can hear words and numbers better than I am. She's a ham, but she loved doing that, supporting me doing that. So if you've got a wife or a husband or the neighbor, because if you go out in your driveway and you start pointing your antenna in the air, your neighbor's just going to come out and talk to you. They're going to think what you're doing.
WPWK, KB1BVH.
You got to get used to that, isn't it? Oh, I killed it.
KV, Whiskey 4, Delta Tango Alpha. Whiskey 4, Delta Tango Alpha, Kilo Golf 4, Alpha Kilo Victor.
All we hear is the video.
Echo Mike 58.
Thank you.
Thank goodness.
So, Jim Wilson, K5ND, is a good friend of I'd like to say he's a good friend. He's probably just a friend. He's an acquaintance. We've operated VHF contests. He's done a lot of things for the ARRL. You'll see his articles in QST. He's a communicator, and he's got a ton of experience. He's our age, and I can't say more about him. I'm going to say I got a few charts of him here that he has put together, and I'm stealing from his charts because I didn't want to recreate anything that wasn't. But if you want to have fun, if you're getting into just want to go out and try something new technically, if you want to work grid squares, DX, you want to do want to be a rover, if you want to get VUCC, everybody know what VUCC is? That's 100 grids on whatever band you're on. And I've got it on 6, on 2, and on 70, and I'm working on some other ones. AMSAT awards. AMSAT has a whole bunch of procedural awards, sort of like POTA, but maybe not quite as pretty as the POTA page. But they, awards can be as simple as you just keep track of what you're doing, and it makes you feel good that you're showing progress and doing different things. When I operate, when I try to make contacts or whatever, I don't try to win the contest always. But I'd set a goal for myself technically to make this number of contacts or make some long distance ones. If you keep your expectations reasonable, you'll achieve more. A ham satellite can be this simple. It belies how much has to go into one of these to be tested to fly in a low Earth orbit. But they're very simple. They're crossband VHF to UHF. That means you talk up on 2, come down on 70, or vice versa on a satellite. These transponders on the satellites, they're just out there transmitting all the time. And when they're going overhead, you go online, you can there's several free places you can find out what satellites are going overhead. You tune to that frequency on your radio, and you can hear them go overhead. The telemetry beacons go over, and you'll hear them come in and then fade and go away. All right. So there's all different kinds of orbits. Low Earth orbit are a lot of FM satellites are low Earth orbit. The other orbits, the higher orbits and the MOLNIA orbits and the different orbits that go over the world, those are all set up primarily for upper sideband or certain digital bands. If you get into this, there's so much to learn about. It's like anything. There's a rabbit hole, right? Start out simple. Start with FM satellites. Work into upper sideband, and you'll just slowly grow your capability, and it's a lot of fun. Right now, this was a couple of years ago, so I know ISS is still active. They've been making FM contacts. You can start with doing something like that if you got a little. You can do it with a handheld, but boy, it's going to be rare if you do it with a handheld. You got to remember the International Space Station is 6 hours ahead of us. They operate on UTC time. So when it's 6 o'clock our time PM, which is the most time people in the evening operate, they're asleep on the satellite. So the morning is a little bit better of a time. Late morning is probably the best time to talk to the International Space Station. All right. I don't want to spend all my time on this, but there's a ton of information here if you want it. I imagine we're going to put this on the server and everybody can get more detail out of it if you'd like. Radios. So if you're going to invest in a bench radio like this, something nice, 9700, or they're not even on here yet because they hadn't come out yet. But if you do that, you will be very impressed with how many different things you can do with them. So start out cheap. You can get upper sideband, lower sideband radios on 2 meter and 70 centimeter used at Hamfest. I won't sell mine to you because I'm using them, but in fact, I try to get there early to make sure that I can get them. One of the things you'll see, everybody's probably seen an 817 before. They're a little QRP HF rig, but they got 2 meter and 70 centimeter and 6 meter on them. Those are like gold, right? An FT817 and then now the ND. The ND is the one you really want. Now I'll never get an ND at a Hamfest, but but they are, that ND has very stable signals. And when you're operating and the satellite's coming at you, you ever heard a semi come at you? It starts out higher in pitch and it goes by and it goes lower in pitch, right? It goes here as it goes by you. I'll talk about tornado sounds later, but Doppler is like that. So when you're adjusting, you have to do that manually while you're pointing your antenna, and it's challenging, okay? I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it more than once or twice just to know how difficult it is. But then the thing to do is to automate it, and that's where the cost gets into this. So there's no doubt in my mind that you can get started for around $1,000 in satellites. It goes up from there pretty quick. All right, so these are a typical antenna setup. Notice they're all vertically polarized. You'll see a lot of satellites are both horizontal and vertically polarized. That means you'll see crosses like this on them. That means that you can work them no matter what attitude the satellite's in. And if you notice that the guy holding the handheld antenna, he's turning it. That means he's turning it so that he can check the polarization and max out the signal to the ground. Software is out there to help you predict where satellites are going to be going overhead. There's phone apps that do that. And I just bought this little Hummer here. It's called a self-contained antenna tracker. Thought that was a clever acronym for satellite tracker. But this hooks into like a 9700, an Icon 9700. It'll hook into your computer and it'll hook into your rotator. And then you can automate things. So the radio sits there and it's doing the Doppler for you, it's doing the satellite tracking for you. All you got to do is talk. Okay, it may not be quite that easy, but it's pretty close. So I'll be talking about this in the future if I come back and do satellites. Yeah, okay. So meteor scatter. Has anybody ever heard of meteor ping? Okay, good. So on 6 meters is where you're going to hear this most, but you can hear it on 2 meters as well. I'm not going to show the video because I think it takes up more time than we probably have today. But it is out there. I'm going to load it up on the server and you'll be able to go look at it. But if you've used WSJTX, you know, that's where you're probably the best place to learn how to do meteor scatter. It's simple. You just start it up, and I'll probably have a picture of it. I hope I added a picture. I didn't. But you just, instead of using FT8, you go up and select MSK 144, and then there's a different waterfall. You're familiar with the WSJTX waterfall. This waterfall has it's listening, and then if there's a ping going on, if there's a meteor come in, it'll have a little spike in the signal. And in that little spike, your radio, your computer is sending out a lot of information. It's like a highly compressed data stream over and over and over of your call sign and grid square. And then as the meteor happens and the propagation happens, you can decode that on your screen. So it can take 20 minutes. It can take, you know, a couple passes. It can just take seconds, or it can take minutes and minutes and minutes. It's taken me over 45 minutes to make some of these contacts, but when it's a grid square you really want, it's something that you get very passionate about.
Are you bouncing actually off the meteor, or are you bouncing off the changes in propagation?
You're bouncing off of the ionosphere, and the meteor energizes a very local part of the ionosphere. Good point, Mark.
Turns out it's actually used a lot.
It's used commercially. Trucks will ping off these meteors because on any day there's meteors. Every day there's tons of meteoritic dust that comes into our atmosphere. The ones that work the best are like a grain of sand sized. And it's just amazing how much propagation it'll give you. But you got to have the right software, and you got to, you know, the good thing is this is really easy. Anybody that's done WSJTX can do this, I guarantee it. So to know during meteor showers, and these are the times around there. This is so clear on my laptop. I'm sorry, guys, it's kind of blurry. But you can go out and there's a website, you'll have this presentation, but during these times, there's an extra good chance of having real good burns on it. Now, I'll warn you, you should have, I use a loop on 6 meters and I do meteors, okay? So a loop on 6 meters, one of the things I want to tell you, you can get them for a couple $100 online. Does anybody have a loop on 6? Okay. These are wonderful things, wonderful things. I've worked over 300 grids so far off of a loop on 6 meters. Now, if you've got 3-element 6 meter beam, I've got a 7-element 6 meter beam ready to go on top of my tower. I'm so pumped. But that may 5, yeah, good. That way, that will help you, but you'll be surprised. Lower gain gives you a better visibility. It gives you a wider path to the sky. So you aim it, usually you aim it east because that's where the meteors are coming over about midnight. Meteor skip best runs from midnight to noon, not noon to midnight. You can still do them on other times of the day, but that's the best time. All right. I'm gonna move on to make sure we get through everything. Now, EME, there is a video out there, and I'm not going to do it unless we got time at the end. But it is, it's the same thing as satellite. You're just bouncing off the moon. That's the simple way to describe it. In the video, which I think we will see, you got a 12-foot, 70-centimeter antenna, 100 watts. He made his own PVC mount for the antenna, and he made his first contact. So I can tell you that you're not going to make a lot of contacts with that setup. You'll have to set up a sked with somebody that has 4 antennas in an array and has a lot of power. Okay, and then they can work you because they're doing the work, right? Not you. But you can do it with this, especially if you set up a sked with the 100 or so people in the world with that kind of a setup, and you can start having fun. And then you can decide if you want to do more of it. But you're going to need power, and you're going to need at least that antenna in the upper left hand to start really getting serious about it, because then you can work people like that, right? People with a portable setup. There's a guy in Idaho, KL7, anybody know his VHF? Okay, there's a guy there that does portable de-expeditioning on 6 meters. And he has like a 30-foot antenna on a mount that he takes on a trip, breaks it all down, puts it back together, runs 1,500 watts out to it. And he sits there. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be close to it. I don't want to touch it, that's for sure. But he'll aim it at the moon manually. And then he'll bounce off the moon and make contacts with people with it. And he's passionate. So you can go with a 30-foot long plus boom and do it that way. I've got a 22-foot boom on 70 centimeters, and I haven't bothered to try this yet. If you automate things, your rotator's got to be accurate to a 1/2 degree, because the moon is a 1/2 degree wide. So I'm telling you, you can do this. It isn't easy, okay? And if you say I made a moon bounce contact, has anybody made a moon bounce contact? Yes, sir. Tell me, how long did it take you to do that?
I was at several hams houses in that had the equipment, had a 32-foot parabolic, and it was there. But it's interesting hearing your signal come back.
It is fun, isn't it? Yeah, I agree. So most people aren't going to go do this. There's a few of us in here that probably would. I'm going to do that sooner or later. And I'm going to try 900 megahertz. I've got a 300 watt amplifier, 900 megahertz, and I got to get the right radio set up for it. But I'm going to try. There's a lot of people on 900 megahertz. So notice he's got like a dream station here. He's got a lot of power here. He's got 1,500 watts, and he's got antenna rotator, a very accurate antenna rotator. He's gone to some great lengths to make that work. So and then there's the 4-plex of 70 centimeter antennas up close. It's a different one. But you've got to, when you put these up, You have to make sure that your altitude, your azimuth point, that you're pointing azimuth right, and that your elevation rotator is zeroed in on extremely level. If you get a windstorm, it's probably going to knock it out of alignment. You got to be a little bit cautious about how you do that. I'm not trying to tell you not to try this. I'm just trying to tell you it's a challenge. And when you do, it's very rewarding. I want to get to Marcus's presentation here. So Marcus has a great website. Marcus Sutliff, N5ZY, has very active in the EARS club, and he's online today. So Marcus, I didn't put your entire website on here, but what I did is I stole your pictures, and he has this. He likes to call this his jousting car, and I like your sign on the side of your car. It says N5ZY.org 14652 licensed amateur radio, just in case, so that you know that you're a professional. You're not. But no, that's right. So I want to tell you, you've seen some of the setups I've done. You see this little ladder here? This ladder has a vertical on it here, and he put his mount on top of that. Everybody's got a short ladder. Everybody has a mast. You could do this too. That's what I'm trying to say. And we won't call you crazy. We'll just call you part of the team. So he can extend. Yeah, you can call me crazy too. Go up that mast there. He can extend that all the way up, and he's got a 6-meter Moxon and a 2-meter Moxon. And anyway, that's on top of Mount Scott. Has everybody been on Mount Scott before? Did you make any VHF contacts on your 2-meter radio when you're up there? Marcus, is that a great place or what? You can't talk? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's awesome up there.
Okay. So inside the rover, man, I wish this was clearer, but he's got a really nice radio here. I suspect this is a 7610 radio down here, and he's got his Bio-NO pack out here, and he wants more Bio-NOs, and he got into the different, the gates, the power gating and stuff like that. And that's something I haven't done, but I'd like to do. Notice he took the tried and true pool noodle method of picking your coax out your window. Get a pool noodle, cut it in half, cut a slot in it, put it up over your frame and then over your window, and you can go out your window. Guaranteed to leak in a storm. So, but it's better than drilling a hole in your car. I have one of my friends who drills holes in his car, and I'm not that kind of guy. So he used these frequencies, and they're pretty normal VHF frequencies. And I really liked his construction details, and he's got a lot of how he did this online. So if this is something you want to go POTA VHF, this is a cool way to do it. I'm going to tell you, I know you're reading the rules. That's fine. Go ahead and read them. But there's one more rule that I think you need to take into account, and that is you need to publish where you're going to all your friends, to all the people, because you want to make some contacts when you're up there. And if you're in a random day of the week and you go up on the mountain, nobody's going to be listening for you. But I got a VHF database that's 400 people thick of everybody that has VHF capability within 500 miles of here. So I am willing to share that with you under a couple of conditions, and that is a lot of people have given me their telephone numbers off there, and I'm unwilling to share the phone numbers, but I'll share the email addresses and latitudes and longitudes and things like that. But I'd be glad to share that with you if somebody else wants to do that. And Marcus, I know I think I've shared that database with you, and if I haven't, I will in the future. But if you got down to number 4, the number 3 is the most important one. You can kill someone. Don't do that. I've got 13,000 miles in my rover, and the only time I had an antenna come off was in the wintertime when there was a 40-mile-an-hour gust, and I wasn't ready for it. So, but the good news was I designed it safely, and I have I'll show you, but it has a PVC rack and it come off the top right on the bridge down here on Robinson characteristically. And it came over and it hit the ground and I was pretty low speed and it scraped a little off that. None of my antennas were broken. None of them. I had a few elements I had to straighten, but it was okay. Do not drink and drive because using it as a jousting rod may seem like a great idea. Do not have 2 horizontal masts, as they could resemble blasters and invite Imperial stormtroopers to attack. Marcus has an interesting sense of humor. I just wanted to note he was pretty detailed in the equipment he used. So if you want to learn more about how he did it and you want to do something like it, Marcus is a great source of information and his emails on the web. All right, now this is the part I'm only going to talk 5 more minutes and I want to show you that one video. Grid squares are boy, this is awful. Grid squares are just a very integral part of what we do in VHF contesting. So you're in Echo Mike 1.5 and we're right in the middle of it. Down by Chickasha, Oklahoma. Right down here is the corner. It's near a town called Norge. And you can get in all 4 of these by driving about a half a mile. So those grid square corners are very important if you're into anything. So you got to know where you're at. You can learn online. There's places online where you can go to learn that. I'm going to skip over that. This is a website that you can go to today and see what the propagation is like in our neck of the woods. If it's orange, you're going to be able to hear people off your FM radio from a longer distance. Orange or better. If you haven't used DX maps before, this is a wonderful thing. It tells you who's talking to who on 6 meters. It's out there. This is a really good, the Hepburn integrates TV stations around the United States and shows how far they can be heard. This interrelates to the lower level weather. And if you see a U loop on here, the U loop means it's bad propagation within that area or noisy. You need an antenna like this. You don't know it yet, but you do now. Go out and get a 2 meter horizontal or 70 centimeter horizontal or a 3-element 6 meter beam. Get them. I think you will be very happy with them. Similarly on the 70 centimeter, you can get amplifiers. I don't know if these prices are still accurate post-COVID, but there are more inexpensive ones. And I would start with an inexpensive one because even if it doesn't work, you can replace it with a better one later. You can spend on a Lunar Link 1500 watt moon bounce amplifier, solid state. You can spend $5 or $6 grand on it. So you don't want to do that, but you can find used ones on sale for a couple $100. These are different setups I've had in the past with VHF, UHF arrays, and I had a lot of fun with these. This was only 25 feet up. I think I've only made a handful of 1296 contacts, but on that 3-element 6 meter beam, I worked a lot. Other setups I've had, this was my tower going up. It's over 100 feet now. All right. I'm not going to go through this. This is largely what you've seen again. Another local ham, K5 SRT rover, has this setup, and you'll notice none of this is high gain stuff, and it works very well if you're going to go grid circling. And grid circling is where you go around those grids together, and there's 16 combinations of grid squares you can use to make contacts with each other. So one person stays in one corner, the other person drives around, then that first guy goes over to the next corner, and then you go around. And the next guy goes to the next corner and you go around. Well, I've mapped out probably 50 of these in the Midwest, and I've been to about half of them. So if you want to know, you want to have a map of one of these grid square corners, talk to me. I'll give you my research, and you will find it's a lot of fun. Go out with somebody else and do something. All you have is a 2 meter vertical and a 70 centimeter antenna. Go out for part of the contest and operate and try to make a few contacts. I think you'll be rewarded by that. All right, I'm going to build through these, but. So you can put a lot on a vehicle pretty quick. If you're single, this is a great hobby. So this is my setup. And if you ask why am I climbing on top of my vehicle? Because I have to, but I chosen this vehicle intentionally because it has a pretty strong roof. And I have wood that goes across to help. That's little bottom part here is wood. And then I got PVC to hold it up. And those straps do most of the work of keeping it straight and safe. And I'm saying, if I can build PVC and wood and antennas, you can too. And even if you only built them 3 foot high and put 2 meters and 70 centimeters on there, you would be a player in the Midwest. Okay. There's not a lot of rovers. And if you want to learn how to rover, come with us. We'll do it. We're not doing it today. We're going to be operating from home today. But if you, in the future, if you want to do this, reach out. I owe Don Loving. Don Loving is not here today, I don't think. He may be online. But I just want you to know, I still owe him a trip out to see what it's like. But if you're wondering what these things are, yeah, and the next question is going to be, how fast can you go? And the answer is pretty fast. I've been up to 85 in this into a 40-mile-an-hour wind, and I won't do that again. But it works. But if you'll notice, I got some line running up to my 2-meter loops up here. That's to keep the 4 magnets that's holding that down from being knocked off the vehicle. Those strings, if they start to lift off, those strings keep it from lifting off. Doesn't take a lot. It just takes a little bit to keep those magnets in contact. Don't drive right behind me, but I've never had a problem. It's an issue. It's usually I get 17 with this without the antennas on it. With the antennas, I get about 12.5. And I got a little 33 centimeter vertical, not a 33 meter vertical. All right, so here's the difference. This is really important, and I'm going to end up here now, just after this chart here, I think. But this is a loop, a dual loop pattern. I can talk about 50, 60 miles, maybe 75 on a good day. That's without propagation. And then the green circle, these are contacts I've really made using my long boom Yagis on top of the vehicle. So if you can't get on the air because of an HOA, put them on your vehicle and park it in your driveway. So there's a lot of data in here about how I built, and I really like my architecture page because I built it. But the red is power, and these are the antennas at the top. Across the top is the powers. The green are the switches, and then the actual radios are at the bottom. I've actually added a lot more, and I use better. Take a magnet out to your car and verify that it's steel versus aluminum. Oh, Marcus is absolutely correct. All right, so I'm going to zip through these. This was about 2 years ago in my vehicle, and I had a FT847 that said goodbye to me. 736, great radio. I wouldn't recommend buying them anymore. They're getting to the end of their life, and mine has heat issues. So, but they were a wonderful radio, and Yaesu, I just wish they'd make a replacement. But that's why I've gone ICOM now, because ICOM's got wonderful radios, and they're available. This is my setup now, and I got a 9700 in the upper left, and that's a 7610 I use just for 6 meters in the vehicle. I've actually got, you notice this is a portable display that you can just lay down in here, and I use these really clear plastic sticky things on both sides, and it'll stick right there, and it won't move because things move in a car. And we got a little laptop here. Here, what you can't see, there's a laptop in a hanger over the top of the chair, and it has a laptop in it and a keyboard. So we do 6 meters on one and 2 meter digital on the other one. And this is really important. Transmit at the same time, because then you won't interfere with yourself. Okay. But we've gotten, you do this long enough and you learn how to do it. Notice the little headlamps we use when it gets dark. All right. I think that should be it. And we should ask some questions, answer some questions. And I'll answer them even after the meeting. Yes, sir.
So my question is, if you're buying iPhone radio today and worried about what you should buy.
I'd buy a 9700 if I was into VHF. I think it's a wonderful radio. In fact, no doubt I will go to my grave not understanding everything how to use on that radio. I mean, I am growing since I bought it, I just keep learning and learning, and it is so much capability put into a box. I bought it for $1,500, and I think you can get that around holiday timeframes. I think you'll find that they're like $1,700 now if you buy them online. So they've gone up in price, which is really, it's a real sign, right? I had a blurb in here about the new ICOM 905.
Yeah.
But we don't need to show it. But the 905 is at the end of this. There's one page that talks about the radios I recommend. 9700. The 905 when it comes out, I hope it's not $4 or $5 grand, but I bet it is. It's probably going to be at least 3. But it'll have 2 meters, 70 centimeters, 1296, 2 gig, 5 gig, and a transverter for 10 gig. And when you get to that big, your coax needs to be this big, right, to get the signal down. But what they did was, yes, they got a new thing called ARRL, and they put the transmitter up at the tower, and then it receives to that, and then they send it over the Ethernet down to your radio, and they got a shielded Ethernet that goes to your radio. So that's going to set a new bar, and we're getting ready now. All the, a couple of us had contest records for VHF distance and not distance, a number of contact score, that kind of thing. Nowadays, you are going to find that those are all going to be broken with the advent of that radio, because now people are going to be easily able to do microwave. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Oh, yes. Thank you for saying that. I had it on the architecture chart, but there's a voltage up converter I recommend, N0LD, something like that. But it's in my presentation. So if you want to look at it, or I can, if you talk to me afterwards, but it's a little up converter. If you ever used a Kenwood radio and you transmit it and your radio turned off and turned back on again, they need voltage, right? But you run a 20-foot power cable from your battery in my Suburban to the back seat, I got voltage loss just from the fact that I don't use, 6 gauge wire to the back because I can't afford it. So I use 12 gauge wire, and then I boost the volume up. The way Marcus overcame that in his setup is he put the Bio-Eno battery right next to his radio, right? But then you got to buy Bio-Eno radios, and they're expensive. I mean, Bio-Eno batteries, and they're expensive. So I recommend, MFJ has one. Okay, the N8FJK one, I think, has one that's 40 amp. Highly recommend that. I can put 2 radios if I don't use them at the same time on it, which I don't because I have blown fuses. But I have 3 of those. I have 3 40 amps, and they're about $200 a piece, but they make operating so much easier. I don't have problems with power, but I run 3 wires from the battery because those wires will actually get warm, at 40 amps power running through them. Good question. Anything else? So you don't need all that extra stuff if all you're going to do is 2 meter and 70 centimeter. That's my point. Start out with something simple. Try it during a contest. Get on the air. Put a 2 meter beam up with a Radio Shack rotator, one of those cheap TV rotators you can get for. I got one used at the Hamfest a couple of months ago for $75, and they're about $150. But $150 rotator, $200 antenna and you'll be talking to the world on 2 meters. And that's where most of the action's at. All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir. So, do you know where Arc City is? Yeah, that's a good question. I could do a whole presentation just on that. I map out high spots everywhere I go. By the way, an overpass on a freeway is a high spot in Oklahoma, right? Same in Kansas, right? So there's actually, they cut a 4-lane highway east of Arc City, called, I think it's on 160, and they cut it through a hill. And on each side of it, there's a little hill, and there was a cow pasture access road up on top of that hill, and it was beautiful, and that helps a lot, right? Water towers. You go into a town, the water tower is usually at the highest spot in town. So pay attention to where water towers are at. That's a cheap way to find a high spot. All right. I will be around a little bit after the meeting if anybody wants to answer any questions, but ask any more questions. Anybody gotten last calls?
Go.
Hey, Randy.
Thank you.
I want to thank him today for the quick focus.
Thank you.
Got an online question.